Welcome back, everybody. Just Mike here. Today we're going to be working on a cuckoo clock that has the dancers on it also. This is a Regula 25 movement, and the 25 means it's a one-day clock. And that's how I'm going to title this one, because some people don't understand them, I guess, or would like help on their cuckoo clock. Anyway, let's take a look at this clock. So this is a clock I got, and I normally wouldn't buy a clock like this because it didn't come with the weights, it didn't come with the topper, but I like the idea of the pheasant and the rabbit, how they sat on here. It's got a couple of acorns, and the acorns are missing, but the caps are there, in which that's how the clock comes, and the horn is missing. No weight, so that's why I don't normally pay that much for these, and I have to look to see what I paid for it, but normally, like I say, I don't pay that much when you're missing all those items. Anyway, to show you the measurement of if I was to find a topper, this here, you're measuring across for it 12 1/4, so you'd need between a 12 1/2 to 13 inch topper to go on this clock, and you're gonna have to get one that has what I call the clear stain, and whether it's gonna have a deer head on it or a bird, in so many words it doesn't matter. But normally I wouldn't buy a topper, because looking on eBay, for example, they're running between $50 to $100 just for the topper, and I'll just say it, that's thievery. Anyway, let me show you a topper I do have. So this is a topper I do have, which would go fine at the clock. And the color, this here has got the brown color, this here's a more of a walnut color, so there's a chance I might have to work with that. This one came without ears, and the horn, and I can deal with carving new ears for the clock if this is the one I decide to put on there. But at least it would be a topper for the clock. Now this one here, I happened to kind of accidentally fell into it. It came with a clock that was parts, and they threw in a bunch of stuff. This was in there too, and for what I paid for that, this here, you might as well say, was free, because it was so cheap, which surprised the heck out of me. But I will admit, it is missing the ears, and some people don't want to deal with that. Oh, by the way, this clock did come with the hands. I already took it out because I wanted to put the chains back on. Not that it helped that well, but we do know it ticks, and one of these will make it cuckoo, and all that works, but I can tell that this here either needs oiled or should maybe have it cleaned. When I take this apart, I'm going to leave the whistle boxes in. They're in good shape, but the whistle boxes, they are screwed in, but they have a staple, which isn't actually a heart attack, because you can line that staple up and put them back in, but I can get that movement out without worrying about that part. And it does have a, we'll call it a nice music box. Let me find the right wheel for it. And then it does have a second tune. The person that owned this ripped all the papers off, so that doesn't devalue it. It's just not right, I guess. But they wanted to see the wood clock, not the papers. Now, so far, the only thing I've done to the music box is this rod that drops into the hole. The one hole it dropped in just fine. The other hole, it was missing, and so I had to give it a little bit of a bend further in for it to catch the hole. Now, this doesn't have a back door, so I have to buy a gong for this, and also I'm going to have to make a back door. Like I say, this clock was missing quite a few things, so I'm sure I didn't pay that much for it. Now, to figure out the weights, it's always good to look. It's always good to look at the movement, and what you're going to do in the book anyway, or what I'm going to do, is I'm going to look at this back plate, and for every cutout and whatnot, I need to match that back plate up with the book to figure out what weights this clock's supposed to have. Anyway, the number is a 25, which is a 1-day clock. Then it looks like a 1-W. Now they date these clocks, I think they started in the 70s, and you'd have to look up what the W is, and which is odd about that. Number one, you have to look at the clock and figure, well, it's not that old. And then the dates, they might have 3 different groups of years that this clock could have been made, and looking at this clock, it's a newer clock. So I can't find this movement in the book, and I'm terrible at looking up things online. So what I'm going to have to do is a water test, and that's to put on the hook of the clock, and it'll probably be the music side, or it could be the Cuckoo side, because that's where most of your strain is on the clock. I would put a small bucket on there, and then I would start adding water and testing the clock to see if it would play right, whether it be the bellow side or the music side, and that would determine how close I am to knowing what weight I need. You take that whole bucket with the water, weigh it, and that's where you're going to come up with some kind of number. And you can always go a little bit higher of weight. Just remember, you don't want to go too high, because then next thing you know, your music's playing too fast, or the bird's cuckooing like a machine gun. You don't want that either. Or if you're like me, there's a chance you got some weights laying around that are extra that you bought, and you can test the weights out and see which one makes the clock sound right. So to start off with on this clock, I'm going to remove the chains. If they're not stuck in there already, this one I think stuck. And so that means you need to take your hooks off and your rings off and just pull them out of there, and it's best to stand the clock up so it'll go up and over the winder instead of getting caught inside, which is no biggie, because once you get the movement out, then you can get the hook out of there then. Or the hook won't be on there, the chain could wrap up in the gears, you can get it out then. So before you really start on the clock, don't forget to take pictures, because pictures are going to be your friend. On here, it only had one lift wire, and this is what you need to take a picture of to see you have a longer arm here. Normally your longer arm would go to the right side of the clock, but you need to pay attention to when you're taking a picture that there shows where it's going, because if you're new at it, you want the bellows to sound right, not backward cuckoo, but a normal cuckoo. And also, if you got the wires on backwards, there's a chance that your bellow will overlift, and overlifting will stop the clock from cuckooing also. And so get your pictures taken before you take the clock apart. Here we have a shut off for the cuckoo, so it doesn't cuckoo at night if you don't want to cuckoo at night. Make sure to take a picture of this area here so you know where this goes. Here I'm going to go ahead and take the screws out of the music box. I'm going to have to lift this wire up a little bit to wiggle it out of there, but it has its gear there, and it doesn't really attach to the clock. It attaches to, or it goes around with this black gear here, so it'll just come right out besides lifting that wire. And now I have a hidden screw in there that's not hidden anymore, and I can get those 4 screws out. Oh, and by the way, don't forget to disconnect your hands and the cuckoo bird. Pay attention when you take the shutoff off. You got the nut, and this one here, you need to pull it out and kind of give it a twist to get it out of there, and then bring it back inside the box. But here is a washer that you don't want to lose, because it's the one that's kind of like a spring washer where it puts a little bit of tension on the rod, but you can tighten the nut down and it won't freeze up the rod. This here holds it just right. Now I have the 4 screws out, which on mine I have to pay attention. The one side on the bottom missed the block because of the way they put it together, I guess. And so what they did is they added a longer screw in, so it'd still hold the movement, but it went to the front of the clock instead of the block. To get this out, you got to watch the cuckoo bird, because you need to get around the wire that's on the bellow, and watch the people, because you need to wiggle it to get the people all the way out of its door. And there we go. Here you can see it's got an oil film on it. It's dusty. But here's a good time to take a picture and make sure you're getting, there's a spring wire here that's holding this lever here down. Check out where the spring is for the bird to go back in and out. You want to see where these things are so you can get the clock back together again. Here you have this that operates the bird coming in and out. You need to see what side the rod, or this rod here, is on, so it'll work. Here you got the wire, spring wire, hooked in around here. Get pictures of that. When you're taking pictures also, besides taking a picture of the front and the back, you want to see this hand shaft here. Lay it down this way and start taking pictures on the inside so you can see the gears and where the winders are, what the winder looks like, that kind of stuff. Get good clear pictures. This way it's not too important, but still get in at an angle. Get in at an angle to see. Here, this is just giving you a ballpark of where this here is, and this could be ready to start playing the music, and so you're going to still have to adjust this. This here is the trigger that triggers the music box, and this is the part that holds the fan once it's been triggered until the cuckoo's done, and then this whole thing pops up out of the way. and it releases the governor on the music box, and the music will play until the rod goes into the hole of the barrel. This here I don't like. It doesn't have a screw in it, so it's pressure fitted on, and there's a chance, well, I should say there's a good chance you should be able to get it off, whether you don't want to bend it, but whether you can get in here and start prying it, rocking the screwdriver back and forth, or you might be able to take a pliers and grip the brass piece there, and you might be able to twist it off. Sometimes you got to watch these, you don't want to be bending them off. Yeah, that's too strong. So I have to figure a way to get that off, or I'll just leave it on there knowing the winder's going to stay on. I already took the bird off. I'm going to take the people off, and there's a couple things you need to do here because you're trying to prevent friction. This has got an E-clip here you'll be taking off. And now that will release the people. And this is turning quite well. Has a little bit of vibration in it, some of these. But what you do here, because you might want to clean these if yours is stuck, in underneath here is an E-clip, and you might be able to get the just pull the people off. Now this won't come out yet until you take this E-clip off, and I'm going to take these off later because I don't want to get all these bunch of parts stuck together. But like I say, these are coming off quite easily. On some of yours, you're going to have to, depends on what they're made out of. These are made out of wood, but normally you go underneath here and you start prying up, and they normally come right off. But it's good to clean inside there because the oil might have started gumming up, and besides all that dust that gets on here, it also collects down inside there. So we're going to take the hammer off first. We need to take the spring. It's just bent through the hole, just bent over. Normally they come back up through that hole there and tie it. So once the spring is undone, you'll bring this around, and that shorter peg sticking there, that's what locks it into place. The longer one is the one that hits this wheel here to make it gong. So once you get that one off, you take your shorter one off, and here we got the star wheel in the way, got it to turn. Here it's off. Here it's off. Like I say, they all have that lock to hold them in place. Now normally I'm gonna have to probably work on this, but normally when you put this on, you still might have to turn this whole wheel to get your exact cuckoo, the last coo to drop. Or you can do like I do. I go inside here, and what I do is I'll separate the frame, and what I need is this winder to pull away from this gear here, so that way it's done cuckooing. That way I can move this and make this move enough to get the last coup in there. And that's the way I do it. It's a little more difficult. Like I say, these normally turn, and this one's on there really tight. So I might have to check it out and see if I can fix that. So to get this post off of here, this screwdriver might be okay. You normally just open that a little bit. Don't get carried away, because you can possibly break those off. And I don't know what you're going to do if you do break them off. You get it open enough where you can, that one I may open too far, but you take your screwdriver in there and just give it a turn. And you get it out of there. We're going to take this off so you don't damage it. Normally takes a really fine screwdriver, because that's a small screw in there. That screw's really tight. It's just like the hole's not meant for it. So we got that off. We got everything off here that we can take off, or we want to take off. Here, well, let's take those off in a minute. Here we have a E-clip that holds this washer, we'll call it, on. This washer holds this gear and holds the snail down. And then we have this one here that has the E-clip. This one here, when it drops down here, this snail's telling this how many times to cuckoo, and when it drops on there, it comes down, and you can see it's going to cuckoo 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, possible 6 times. It knows what it's doing, and this is what needs to be free. Otherwise, your clock will cuckoo 1 time on the half hour and 1 time on the hour, because this wasn't free enough. And also this one needs to be free. It's got the extra spring on here to help push it down, because if it's not free and getting stuck there, it might cuckoo 1 time only again. So here again, we're looking for a very small screwdriver and looking for the hole to get that E-clip out and try to keep it from going to no man's land. I got both E-clips out. Get the washer off of there. Sometimes you got to take both these off at the same time. Depending on the age of your clock, you got to watch this one. Underneath, this has got a plastic barrel that's connected to the plastic gear. Some of your vintage clocks, and I do believe a certain brand, they might have a brass barrel sitting on there that holds this up instead, and you don't want it to get stuck on here and all of a sudden it falls on the floor. So kind of be careful of that when you're taking that apart. So here we're going to take the spring off. And this one isn't going to come off because this is in the way and it's riveted on. But I do have to take this E-clip off because I'm going to pull this plate off and I can't have it in the way. So that's free now. Let's see. So this bigger one here has an E-clip, and it's sitting right down here. As you're taking some of these parts off, you might want to take pictures if you've never done it before, because like I say, pictures are your friend. Like I say, this one here I'm not going to be able to get off. And we're going to go ahead and pull this off. I relate it to the Pac-Man. That's not what it's called, but it's easier to do simple terms of something that you might be able to remember easier. And to get that off, you need to hold on to your gear, and then just, this is pressure fitted on. So pull up or pull on it as you're getting it off. Be careful of your wire though, you don't want to destroy the wire, otherwise you'll be buying a new one. So I think we're ready to take the last 3 nuts off and pull this thing apart. So what you need is a cup, a piece of 3-inch plumbing or something to hold your movement up so you're not pressing on the shaft for the hand. I happen to have these fancy feet, and I do enough of these clocks that it was worth it to me to buy those. And so what I plan on doing now is trying to get this plate off so I can take a picture down onto the movement, because sometimes it's easier to get some pictures around that way than it is trying to look into the sides of the clock to see what the gear looks like, even though that's better than nothing. So I already know this here, I haven't been able to get off yet, is going to be messing with some of the gears. And I'm also going to get loose enough I can take this out. It's going to come out anyway, just that I don't want it on top of the plate. We have a little washer here I missed, kind of like a barrel. That there's for your shut off, and the lever that goes to the outside, this here fits up inside there, and that's what keeps it from getting wedged. And you might want to take a picture of that, knowing where it goes. So here all those came with it because I couldn't get that off, and it's buried in here anyway. So we can take a picture of this facing the way it is to give you an idea where it goes back. And this fell off, which in your pictures it'll show where it's supposed to go down on here. So let me take some pictures, even though I shouldn't need them, but it's always good to have them. And when you're taking pictures, take a picture this way, this way, this way, because the gears just like I say, kind of look different to you when it comes to getting these things to. There we go. Oh. When it comes to putting this thing back together. And by the way, this here has got an E-clip on it also, so we need to take that off, the E-clip. And when you go to put it back on after cleaning, don't forget to oil that. So when you take your winders out, with them off, it's good to test them to make sure, even though maybe you had the chains on, they wound fine. I did notice this winder here didn't do so hot. For some reason, this here part of the clicker is bent up. How that, let's say, happened, I don't know. Let me see if I can get to bend down. Not always that easy. And they do sell rebuild kits for these if you needed it. Now I can turn it a lot easier before I had a lot of force. But I'll clean this, and I normally put a drop of clock grease in there because that way it's less wear on this, the clickers themselves. Besides, I do oil in here too. I look to see what turns inside here and give that a drop of oil also. That one's not gonna come off yet. This won't come out because it has the gear on it that we'll say operates the hour hand and minute hand and keeps it from flying around too much, too easily, because it has a spring here. And this can come off if you want it off. I don't normally worry about taking it off. Some people who use these little dikes get underneath there and start prying it off. Sometimes you can get underneath there and just pry it off with the screwdriver. It only has to come up a little bit because it's fatter where this gear is sitting, and then it thins out as it comes up. And that's something to give you a reminder. This here, if your clock isn't ever cuckooing, if everything else seems to be fine, this could be slipping and needs to be pushed back down. And if it's down, you might have to ping it to seal in the hole so it will stick to the rod. This here is a 2-point star. One point is taller than the other. On the shorter one, that would be your half hour cuckoo, one cuckoo. On your taller one, it would count what the hour is, and after it's done counting, then your music box would play if you have a music box. On this one, it's got the warning pin there. And it's stuck in the plate, which isn't a good thing. So it might have a build up a lot of stuff on there. and the hole could be full of dust. Like I say, I still need to work on this and see if I can get that to come off of there. Now that I'm older, by the way, I'm going to add some clock oil. Nice. Anyway, I add some clock oil. I put my leather gloves on so I could hold this because I'm older now, so I have office hands, meaning my skin's tender, we'll say. And grabbing a hold of this, rocking it back and forth and pulling out on it. I'm hoping I can get this thing to, looks like it's moving. And there we go. Now that I have it off, it should be easier to set this clock so the Cuckoo operates the way it's supposed to. Nice. I always use toothpicks after cleaning it, whether you polished it or whether you just took it out of the cleaner. I run the toothpick all on the back side and then onto the front side, and you can see there's stuff that's still in there that my clock cleaner and ultrasonic cleaner can't get it out. And what I'll do is I'll go over all of this, use the other end, do this side, get me a new toothpick and start all over again until the black goes away, because all the black that you get out of there is an old varnish type dust and oil that's dried up in there and isn't doing the clock any good. So now that we have all the parts clean, now's the time to separate them from the stuff that goes on the outside of the clock, so that way it's not as daunting of a task to get this thing back together again. And I'm also going to put this to the side, but leave it outside. Remember it. I want to put the case, start putting the case together and then put this in. And here you want to clean up your, I'm going to call it rust. What I have is this is a small piece of that brownish red colored what they call it, Brillo pad or something like that. You can get them at Home Depot. Don't forget to put this on and get it oiled. Make sure it just moves around real easy. Let's not forget this. You want to put a little bit of oil on here because it'll stop drag, and also there's a chance your clock will start, as this thing's going back and forth, it'll start going squeak, 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 and that tells you this here is what's doing it. And like I say, it is drag on the clock. So get a little oil on a toothpick and just kind of brush it on where it hits the gear, and you should be good. As you're getting this on, put the nuts on, don't tighten them up. You're just putting them on there so as you're getting the other gears on, you're not popping the plate too far or whatever. That one seems to be always the one that you forget, and it holds everything up. That tells me they're all in. And now's a good time, because it's clean, try wiggling them up and down each one of your gears, and try to wiggle them sideways, because what you're doing is you're looking for pivot wear. You definitely need them to move up and down, otherwise the plate could be bent or something of that sort. Everything looks good. So now's the time to go ahead, snug your nuts up, and oil the clock before you start putting all that other stuff on there, because it's going to be hard to see all your pivots. So now I'm going to get the Pac-Man on that goes right there, and this here needs to fall right in the mouth of it, and so I just set the warning pin. I'm holding it so the warning pin's on, will say. And then when I let go of this, the warning pin inside there catches here, and that's where it's supposed to stop. So you can see it's not where it's supposed to be. This comes around and it should fall down right in the mouth, and it goes further. So I need to hold this gear and there it falls in the mouth. That's what you need. Now go ahead and put this spring back on. Get the hook around the frame. Bring it over and drop it. Oops, I need to get underneath here. I messed up. Now it pushes it down like it needs to. Now we'll get the Cuckoo bird arm on. Remember, this paddle here has to be on the inside where that peg is. And your squeezy's on there, but check it each time, because you don't want it, oh, I got that off again. You don't want it too tight. There, I got it back into place. Pop it down to place. And this would normally be popped down too, but like I said, I got it opened a little bit too much. So that's not wiggling too much. Now I need to take this spring, wrap it around, and hook it on the frame. Which is sometimes easier said than done, but you'll get it. Not moving much. I'm going to see what's wrong with that. So I hope you enjoyed this so far. Just got the hammer and the lift arms for the bellows in, and the next video is going to show finishing up the clock, getting it timed to where the cuckoo sounds right, and music box in, and how to time it, or not necessarily time it, but to get it installed also. Anyway, and also don't forget, I have the topper that I need to carve the ears to the deer head, and let's see how well they turned out in part 2. Anyway, don't forget to subscribe because it's free, and until next time, God bless, and don't forgive me a thumbs up.